Hello everybody. Just want to do a quick video for the next project that I'm planning on building. Um, if you've been following my videos, you probably realise what this kit's probably going to be. I've been saying I wanted to do one of these for quite some time, but if you're new to the channel, it's obviously a Model Factory Hero kit, so I'm going to get straight to it. It is the Vincent Black Shadow. I chose this kit. There's three to choose from. There's the 1948. And then there's two 1950s, the Black Shadow and the White Shadow. They are very similar, the Black Shadow and the White Shadow, apart from the front hub. There is a slight difference on the front hub from what I can see, and obviously the painting. The engine's obviously white, so there's a painting guy which is generally different, but generally they use the same parts as each other, apart from the front hub. It's got like vents on it. If you look on the pictures, it's like some intake vents. I guess they're there to cool the hub on the bike. The 1948 kit, there's a lot of chrome bits that's not actually chrome, that's still white metal, and I like the chroming that Model Factory Hero do, and probably being a bit lazy, well, a bit of a lazy modeler here. If it's already chrome, then you don't have to do it. Some bits need obviously changing if I don't like it, but generally it's really good chroming, so I tend to leave it alone. So that's the reason why I picked this one. Really, I like the way the engine looks, the way the black. It's all predominantly black, and then it sort of accentuates the actual chroming of the bits and pieces that I generally want to put on. So what we'll do, I'll sort of take you through the kit, and see what you get, and see why these kits are so expensive. In the UK, these are about 500 quid, so they're not necessarily the cheapest kits to buy. So anybody that's obviously wanting to buy one, that's not obviously seeing what you're going to get, you'll probably see what you're going to get for your money. So let's crack this thing open. Yes, starting off on the top, instructions. What's this? This is probably an extra piece that they're obviously done that's changed from the instructions. Generally, Model Factory Hero, if they've modified anything in the instructions that they've done, they tend to put these pieces in. So I guess there'll be a stage in the kit that it will say one thing, and then this will correspond to the new bits. So obviously, so on the front, this is obviously you see the White Shadow and the Black Shadow. List of parts, obviously. I don't generally go through it on the parts. I tend to trust Model Factory Hero. The way they pack these things tends to be pretty good. I've never had one that's anything missing, and they have a great backup service. If there's anything missing, it's tend to be just dropping them a line, and generally they'll generally send these things through. So, looking on the kit, it's very similar from when I built the Brough. The way the engine generally. If you see on the engine's basically the fins are all individual. So you basically build them up like a sandwich, which forms the fins. The space in between each part obviously gives you the gap in between the fins. I am considering adding some more details. I've got some probably proper screw heads and bits and pieces, which I'll go into as I build it. It's obviously all going to be pre-built, so when I build these things, I don't put necessarily all the small detail pieces on. For instance, like round the crankcase, I don't know if you can see. You'll see like there's the screw heads. So when you see me assemble this kit, you won't see all the smaller detail pieces on it. Mainly because sometimes these parts have to be painted, and you'll have these later after it's been painted. And other times, if you put them on at the mock-up stage, when you mock the bike up, as you see, I'll mock the bike up to sort of a very basic sort of togetherness. They'll fall off anyway. So they're generally the bits that I will generally put on as the final fit. So everything's painted and everything's ready to go. Then you will start putting the detail bits on. But you sometimes need to pre-fit these pieces to make sure that they fit. Certainly the rivets, you wouldn't necessarily need to do that. But there is parts on here that will need to be obviously shaped and obviously formed. And this is the thing with white metal kits of this sort of stature. People think because they're so expensive they should fit together like a Meccano set, and by no means do they do that. And this is the whole idea, is they give you sometimes a raw component or a raw casting. And I say raw, it still looks the part, but it doesn't necessarily fit onto the part it's intended to fit onto. You know, you have to drill it or shape it or file it to make it fit together. And this is why these kits are regarded as expert build or skill level 5 or they're a higher level. Model Factory Hero, when these produce these kits, they will have expected you to have done or to have had some sort of connection with resin or white metal parts, even connecting to plastic parts. There's kits out there called trans kits, which are a good place to start. So you basically take, say, a Tamiya bike of whatever it is, and you want to change the fairing, they'll do a different version of that bike. Tamiya don't produce it, so you will get smaller companies that will make what they call trans kits. They'll make maybe a different fairing. They will make etch parts. They will make white metal parts to change that bike slightly into, say if it was a 1987 bike and they did a slight variant of it for the 88 bike or 89 bike or whatever. They will make the parts, so you take the base kit and you'll transform it into the later version of the bike, i.e. by the fairing or the tank or whatever. And they're a good place to start because they give you raw resin pieces to deal with. Because the glues are going to be different. They're not going to glue with normal polystyrene cement. You're going to have to start using super glues or epoxies, whichever you take your choice with. So they're a good place to start rather than jumping straight into one of these. People want to see these kits and they want to build them, but as hard as it is to tell some people that I've seen in the past that want to jump in, the skill level's not there yet, and they'll end up getting so frustrated with it that it'll either not get finished, it'll go onto the shelf, or in worst cases it'll get thrown in the bin, and they'll blame the kit because it just doesn't fit for the price of it. It should fit together better. That's not the way these kits work. So after that rant, I'll move on. So generally, obviously, that's the engine parts. You've generally got the frame, which is not a lot of frame because obviously it bolts onto the engine. You've obviously got the tank. Now going back to that part that I was on about before for the tank, that'll be the bit that section will replace in the kit. So it's basically using a rivet. They've gone from a rivet to a hexagonal bolt. So they're obviously looking at it that it's a screw bolt into that section there. So that basically replaces that. So that explains that section. Chain, which is, let's just say that's just a nightmare in itself, sometimes making these chains. What I will say on these kits, for me, and this is not really a negative comment, it's just basically the way I work, is I don't like the white metal rivets that they use in Model Factory Heroes. I built the 1/12 scale kits and they use a plastic center rivet, if you can see that. And what you do with that is, it's a bit like old school where you put the chain together and you get like a hot pin or something hot and you melt over the ends of the rivet to form the top of the chain. And I got on with that better because you have some control over how much you dome over the plastic. With these kits, they use white metal. And the problem with white metal is sometimes the castings are not perfect. And when you squeeze, you're meant to squeeze them with a pair of pliers. And when you squeeze these over, they don't always conform very well. And sometimes if they don't form properly, the chain will just fall apart. But I'll go into that more when I do the chain. In some cases, I wish they would have just left them as plastic. Molded plastic and do the older method. So if there's really anything criticism that I can say on that I sort of loathe doing sometimes is the chain. It can sometimes fall apart and it can sometimes take a bit of a chore to get them together. But anyway, we'll come to that when we do that, and that's a long way ahead yet. So then you go to the next page. Basically, I'll go through the swinging arm, the rear cluster setup. So basically, the basically assembling the rear parts. Now the thing with white metal is it can bend. So when it comes out of the mold, it might not be. I'm not saying it's going to be completely out of shape, but it might not fit to that. It might not be in this sort of shape. And this is where pre-assembly is really, really important. There is no point painting all this and then you put it together and it doesn't fit. And you've got to try and bend things into shape. Sometimes these things will will crack, paint can crack off, or you don't want to really be touching the surface. These are things that are probably going to be, I don't know what the colour scheme is going to probably be yet. It'll probably be a gloss black. And you don't want to be handling the parts as much as you really need to. I get a lot of comments that it's a clean build, and I really like that saying. For me, I want to touch the kit, the parts less and less and less. That as they get into the raw stages, I will handle them as I need to. But once they tend to be primed and painted and certainly lacquered, I don't really want to be handling them as much as I possibly can. I'll probably wear gloves and bits and pieces the more you get to the station, because I don't want finger marks on them. I don't want to be touching the parts as any more than what I necessarily need to, and that way the parts stay as a new looking part, if as much as I can try and explain that. So as I say, this is sometimes where the mock-up comes into. You're basically building everything and making sure everything fits together. And then the next bit, which people tend to get excited about, and it's quite a nice process, it's a steady process, is obviously building the wheels. Generally on the wheel build itself is a steady job, and again I'll go through that when I go through it. It's one of them things that you have to sort of watch somebody do it, then we try and just rave on about doing it. So I will see, well, obviously when we do that, and I'll try and show you how to assemble the wheels. Right, the next bit, obviously, what I go through generally is so this is basically what I was on about before with the sub-assembly. So the only difference between the white shadow looking at this and the black shadow is the front hub. As you can see, the two differences on the front hub. I'll try and get that in focus. That's all I can generally see. You do see on some of the sections is the painting is different, so they'll tell you it's a different colour. So you'll get version A will be a black, version B will probably be red or whatever colour. Obviously, they decide that'll be further into there. So going through this is looking fairly straightforward, really. Obviously, the last pieces of the front end. Obviously, the mudguard. The mudguard, you have a choice. I've seen some of them actually got the mudguard on. So if you're going to not do the mudguard, obviously you would not probably, if these have been drilled, you'd either fill them in and leave it as a complete piece, or you not drill them out. So this is basically all the detail. Now all this will probably not be on. Excuse me. A lot of this will not be on the actual mock-up. So sometimes I won't do any of the handle grips or anything like that. I'll probably put the handlebars on to make sure they fit, and I'll do probably the clip-ons. But most things will, a lot of it will be, certainly the pipe work and bits and pieces won't be on. They'll go on as a last thing, as a kit. Some things I'll probably might change generally, like the bottom things. I'll have to go through the kit really. Some things I like to make work. So if I can make, say, the gear lever move or the shifter move or whatever, how it works together, I'll try and do that. Sometimes it's not that hard to actually do as opposed to pinning it or gluing it. You can sometimes put a screw, you can screw it or pin it or whatever. We'll come to that as we do it. As I say, I'll try and break this video down as much as I can. I'll try and do a better job than I did on the Kawasaki, really. Things got away from me, really. So I didn't always do every video and everything that I did, but I'll try and recompense that. I'll say I'm sorry now if I don't, but I will try. So right, so that's the instruction bits done. So let's crack on with the kit. Let's see what your money's buying. Right, we'll start off with the tank. It's a resin tank. Generally, it's going to obviously need some cleanup. So I don't know whether you can see. I can get it into focus. It's obviously not helping because it's white. You've obviously got rough edges, and although the tank's pre-shaped, it will obviously there's quite a lot of cleanup that's obviously going to need on there. There's little divots that will need filling in and bits and pieces. So there's still work on there to be done. And looking what I've seen online on the kits, there's not a lot of etch parts in the kit. So this is the front hub. So I guess this is a different bag that what you would get in the version in the white shadow. Obviously the hubs in here generally they tend to be they're a different hub, so that would probably be the only difference between the two kits. I'll stand corrected if any of you guys know any different. You know, leave a comment in below. But I believe that's the only thing, apart from the painting. Obviously, everything else will be the same. Right, next bag is obviously the rubber parts and the glazing. You've got your glazing, and you've obviously got the rubber parts. So you've got your footrests and you've got your grips, and obviously you've got your seat, which it is rubber. So obviously these they are a rubber seat, and same as the grips, they are rubber. They have a metal pin that goes through, which attaches, but obviously they do same as the end. They've got like a white metal insert into the footrest, and it's complicated things like this is where the money goes. These kits are made, a lot of them by hand. There is a video actually on YouTube that I've seen, it's quite an old video now, on how to produce manufacture Hiro kits. I don't know whether the process has changed, but knowing the Japanese, it probably won't change as much. They tend to be quite traditional on how they put these things together. So all these things sometimes have to be handmade to put a kit together, and this is why they're so expensive. They don't do, you know, a million kits a day like you see Tamiya produce from an injection molding machine. You know, everything like this has to be hand produced. Tires, fairly straightforward really, front and rear. They look very similar. The front one is obviously different. This front one looks slightly bigger. I'll have to check on that. Right, next bag. Generally, well, I'll just show you this bit. These are just bits of rod really. I guess for linkages and bits and pieces. Next one, let's be careful on how we unpack this, we don't want to lose anything. So you've got your chrome parts. So these are bits actually, I think, in the 1948 for the first kit that's not chromed. So these will just come as white metal. And I do really like the way they chrome. The only downside with chrome parts is how they attach, which does grate me a little bit, I must admit, but you know, I'll deal with that. Is where they attach, you will always get a little bit that's not going to be chromed, and you cannot replicate this chroming. You can't buy a paint, you can't re-chrome it, so you have to be extremely careful on how you cut these pieces off and how much filing you do, because you don't want to damage the chroming, because you can't replace it. Generally, they tend to be white metal underneath, so they tend to be silver, which not like you're not like going to see a black sprue. When you see chroming on plastic parts, it tends to be as a black plastic, and it just stands out like a sore thumb. With these ones, it's not too bad, but still, when you put these kits together, if you're going to have a go on these kits, certainly think about how you handle chroming parts. You do have to be really careful the way these parts come off. Next parts is your turn parts. So again, I have no idea what these bits are talking. The instructions, they'll probably be exhaust actually, and spacers. So I'll have to look at that. I haven't really gone through the kit really. The kit's obviously only just come, so we'll have to generally necessarily go through them bits. Next bits, these are your glazing parts. It's I don't know if you can see them in there. I'll try and turn it so you can see them. These are bits maybe for your clocks. I guess the large one will be for your speedo. I don't know what the smaller ones are. I'll have to find out in the kit, but the certain one looks like the same for the speedo. So they're pre-cut for you. Next bit's obviously is your screws, your bag of screws, which will be, I guess, to put the bike together. Again, we'll go through them. These bits are actually your rivets. I don't know if you can see these. These bits are, the light's getting in the way. The ferrules actually to go through your spoke. So when you put the spoke in to the wheel, these bits go on the inside of the rim to hold the spoke in place. So when you see that little bit that's sticking out the rim, this is the bit you will see. Right, next bag will be, right, these are your spokes. So the spokes have been, what they've done, they've basically pre-bent them for you. Put a sponge in so that the contact in the hub, you might have to kill this over a little bit more, so there's sometimes a little bit of prep for them, but they're generally cut to length. So they're fairly straightforward, quite a few of them. Obviously there's a few of them for the front wheel. Next bag is going to be headlights. So these are the machine parts. So they're your machine parts. It looks looking like from the Speedo. I don't know what them bits are. So obviously springs for the, there'll be something we're obviously wanting springs. I've no idea what these bits are till I see them again. And then you've obviously got your piping bag. So these are all your hoses. They give you basically solder. As apt as it sounds, it's obviously quite, solder's really, really excellent. I do obviously have some, I've used it on the other kits and bits and pieces. It's quite handy for obviously soldering things together, but it's also quite handy for making pipe work too. So I'm not really going to, that's basically self-explanatory really. Most of these things that manufacturer Hiro do are really, they are really high quality, but like I said, they're quite labour intensive. But don't lose a bag. This is why I tend to be a bit anal really when I look at these kits. Is once you take stuff out of the bag, put it all back in, because I don't want to really lose them. Next bag is generally wheel rims. So you've got your wheel rims, you've got your jig to obviously jig the putting the spokes in, and then you've obviously got your mud guards that's in there as well. So they're obviously like mud guards. And then these bags, I would guess, these will be your white metal packs. I'm not going to open every bag because there's just too much to obviously see. I'll try and explain really what bits is. These obviously will be the rivets for the chain, for the white metal parts. These are the bits that I was saying I'm not really keen of. And then these bits will be for your cylinder heads. Now all these parts will need washing. Some people say you don't need to, but I always do. When you feel these parts, you will feel like not a grease, but like a silicone. There's something on your fingers that's very slippy. I can't really explain it really. And generally it's the release agents that they use from the moulding to get them out of the mould. So it gets coated with that, and that all needs washing off. One, so it doesn't get transferred to any other parts, because you can you can't get off your fingers. It's real weird. You have to have done white metal to feel it. If you haven't, you're watching this, you'll probably understand what I'm saying. So all these stuff will get chucked in the bowl. Again, you'll see me do it. The gates basically get chucked in the bowl, warm water, some fairy liquid, or washing up liquid, which is, you probably know it, and basically just wash all the bits. And this bag will probably be the same. So there's quite a lot of obviously white metal parts in here. There's obviously exhaust in there. You've obviously got your crankcases and your frame, exhaust parts, sprocket. So I'm not really going to go through because there's just too much, and I really don't want to lose any really. These parts are not necessarily numbered individually. So again, from a plastic kit, when you get a nice sprue and they're all numbered, so you can follow the instructions. Manufacturers Hiro think, well, you know, you're an expert, skill level 5 and all. You should know what these parts are just by looking at them. And so you sometimes just have to look at the instructions and look at the section you're doing, and generally know of the part what you're trying to fit. So I'm not really going to go through them. And then obviously the next bit of the kit, right? So these bits probably come to the end of the kit now. You've obviously got your etch parts. So again, these will look part for the wheel rim. They look like part of the hub, and obviously your chain links. So they're all individual. So you don't get any. These are fantastic the way they do these actually. They make them so they're etchless, so that there's no frame around each part. So there's no cut off. You just lift them off and use them, because they would be a nightmare to try and file a round edge on them. So that's them bits, and then your last bits are going to be your decals. So you've got your number plates. I believe these go on one version, like they go around the rim. So there's a red line which goes on the edge of the rim, and then obviously you've got your clocks. And then obviously you've got your goal for your top of your tank, obviously the Vincent logos for the top of the tank, and I believe your tax disc, to give you a little tax disc as well. So that's really about it for the kit really. So what I will try and do, I will try and break down. This is obviously the general. I've only just got the kit. The kit only come today, so I thought I'd give you a bit of a heads up for the people who've been following, obviously, for the next kit that I'm building. Really, there's a lot you can't really see. Obviously, in the there's a lot of money obviously in these bits and pieces. But if you want to check out that video online, it's not a bad video to watch actually. Manufacturing here, it's done by, I think, Hobby Link Japan. They went to the factory, and it sort of shows you how they construct kits and put things together. So it's quite an interesting video to watch. It gives you some idea of what they of how they construct these kits, and certainly on molding these parts to show you how they cast these parts. Which are really interesting to watch. So what I'll do, I'll leave the video at that. I'll pack this kit away, and I'll catch you in the next video.